Good morning, students. Today we are going to read the second part of the chapter, The Enemy. In the first part, we have already got the information that the story highlights, जो कहानी है वो highlight करती है how a Japanese doctor saves the life of an American prisoner of war and rises above narrow national prejudices. He risks his honor. डॉक्टर सदाव ने अपना सम्मान, करियर, पोजीशन सबको रिस्क पे रखा and life by sheltering a war prisoner of the enemy camp and saving his life. The author has beautifully portrayed the conflict in doctor's mind. हम पूरी चैप्टर में देखेंगे जब उस डॉक्टर उसका ऑपरेशन करता है कि उसके दिमाग में क्या कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चल रहा है. As a private individual and as a citizen with a sense of national loyalty. So that's why we can see over here, यहाँ भी we can see, should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a portrait? This question has been raised over here. Okay. And we know the story take place on a coastal town of Japan in the year 1941. So we can see over here that Sadao's Hoiki house was a solitary house on Japanese coast where the little boy he had often played. So we can see where was his house situated. उसका घर कहाँ है? Near the coastal area. Okay. And the setting of the chapter is what? The setting of the chapter is why did America and Japan develop aversion? जापान और अमेरिका ने दोनों के खिलाफ ऐसी इतनी नफरत क्यों है? Why? देखो आप, Japanese were hostile to the Americans. Means Japanese were ready to kill any American found in their soil. ऐसा क्यों? ऐसा इसलिए because Second World War was going on. And first of all, in 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Finally, what happened? So the war going on between America and Japan on border. Fine. So Americans and Japanese were enemy. So in this chapter, we would come to know what? That Dr. Sadao not only treated him but also helped him to reach his destination, but also helped prisoner of war. Later on we would come to know his name was Tom. So Tom को उन्होंने help ही नहीं की, उसको treatment दिया और उसको फिर अपने destination पे पहुंचाया. Why? Because this chapter gives the message that humanism transcends all man-made prejudices and barriers. ओके. एंड डॉक्टर सदाव ने ऐसा क्यों किया? अभी कॉमन मैन होता तो ही वुड नॉट, बट डॉक्टर सदाव वॉज ए डॉक्टर एंड he upholds the ethics of medical profession in treating an enemy. Fine. So let us start with the chapter line by line explanation. Dr. Sadao Hoiki's house was built on a spot of Japanese coast, where as a little boy he had often played. The low square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines. So we here we would come to know what? Here we would come to know the setting of Sadao's house, and Dr. Sadao, author would introduce Dr. Sadao. The writer introduces the main character of the story, Dr. Sadao Hoiki. Dr. Sadao's house was situated on the coast of Japan. ये बहुत important है. Why? अगर उसका घर नियर टू कोस्ट नहीं होता तो शायद वो वुंडेड मैन उसके घर के पास में नहीं आता, और इतना बड़ा स्टोरी वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू लर्न ओवर हियर, रीड ओवर हियर. पर ये सब उसके घर के आसपास का जो यू कैन से सराउंडिंग है, इट हैपन जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ दैट. ठीक है. सो डॉक्टर सदाउस हाउस वाज सिचुएटेड ऑन द कोस्ट ऑफ जापान. He had been living there since his childhood. The low square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet, as he had seen man do in the South Seas. तो यहाँ पे we would come to know the childhood of Sadao. What? The house had a low height, okay, and was made of stone. It was set upon the rocky beach, which had a boundary line made with pine trees that were tilted towards one side. I have already shown you the picture. Okay, that were tilted towards one side. When Dr. Sadao was a child, he would climb up the pine trees. वो बचपन में pine trees के ऊपर चढ़ता था. Okay. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines, putting himself on his bare feet, as he had seen man doing the South Seas. ये उसने कहाँ सीखा? On his visits to the South Seas, he would see man do so in order to get coconuts from the trees. Fine. As a boy, Sadao had himself on his bare feet, as he had seen man do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to little brave boy at his side. Father उसको very often कहाँ लेके जाते थे? Often means father on his father. He would accompany his father to the islands of South Seas often. His father would point towards the islands and would say that those were the stepping stones toward the future of Japan. Those islands yonder means what? Father wanted Sadao to understand in his childhood. पापा चाहते थे बचपन में सदाओ को समझ में आए क्या कि they all have to rule the islands, कि सामने जितने islands हैं उनको उस पे क्या करना है? रूल करना है. कैसे? Who know? So where shall we start from them? कैसे? By getting education, by getting you can say victory over there. पापा बचपन से ये लाइन बोलते थे, those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan. Where shall we step from them? Sadao had asked seriously. सदाओ पूछता कहाँ जाना है वहाँ से? His father would reply that it was not known as it depended on the future. Who knows? तो पापा कहते who knows? Who can limit our future? The future had no limits. It depends on what we make it. It depended on mankind, how it shapes its future. Fine. So Sadao had been trained in that way. Sadao had been brought up in that way. Sadao was brought up. Sadao had taken this into his mind. Sadao had taken this into his mind. Sadao had taken this into his mind. So now we will see over here, Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was his only son. Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. For this reason, he had been sent in 22 to America to learn all that he could be learned of surgery and medicine. So in first para, we have come to know Dr. Sadao's author is introduced, Dr. Sadao's Hoiki's house and Dr. Sadao. Then we have come to know, now we are going to read over here कि बचपन में सदाओ को ट्रेनिंग कैसा मिला and where did he go to get higher education. So Sadao retained all the things that his father would tell him as a child. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was his only son, means his father never played or joked with him. They shared a mature relation, and his father underwent a lot of hardships to bring him up. Means the father's chief concern was education, Sadao's education. Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. For this reason, he had been sent at 22 to America. Means father wanted Sadao to get higher education in America, and at the age of 22 he was sent to America. Fine. Why? To study surgery and medicine, to learn all that could be learned. वो चाहते थे कि study करके यहाँ आए and then serve in Japan. He had come back at 30, and after 8 years he returned back. And before his father died, he had seen Sadao, and father's dream was fulfilled. What? That he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist. उन्होंने देखा कि सदाओ खाली फेमस नहीं हुआ, किस चीज़ में? सर्जन में नहीं, साइंटिस्ट में भी. मीन्स father had seen, because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. Means what? Sadao had not only returned what? As a surgeon, but also a scientist. How? We have got the information over here. But as a scientist, means what? Sadao on his way to discover a treatment for wounds, which would make them absolutely clean, entirely clean. Fine. So for that reason father was excited. Fine. So also he knew there was some slight danger that the old journal might need an operation for a condition. Now we can see over here that Sadao returned in Japan. Sadao आ चुका है, but still war was going on, but still he was not sent with the troops. Also he knew there was some slight danger that the old journal, why he had not been sent abroad with the troops, उसको troops के साथ में क्यों नहीं भेजा गया? He was not sent abroad with the armed forces doctor. Japanese army, to serve Japanese army he should move, but he was not sent. Why? Because the journal of the Japanese army might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility Sadao was being kept in Japan. So we would come to know over here that he was retained in Japan because the old journal was suffering from an alignment which needed to be operated upon in case of an emergency. Then we will see over here clouds were rising from the ocean now. So we have already got the information, Sadao was now in Japan. Now we would see what was the scenario on that day when he had seen a wounded man near his house. Fine. He caught the sight of a wounded man near his house. Fine. So we would come to know कि क्या environment था. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days means what? It was the month of February, and clouds were rising from the ocean now means mist. चारों तरफ कोहरा था. The unexpected warmth of the past few days had at night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Sadao watched mist-hide outlines of a little island. Sadao ने देखा, क्या देखा? What? Dr. Sadao saw the boundary of nearby islands become invisible gradually. धीरे धीरे fog was covering the area. Sadao watched mist-hide outlines of a little island near the shore and then come creeping up the beach. Sadao was pondering over the air कि वहाँ अब धीरे धीरे कोहरा उसके बीच से घर तक आएगा. Writhing around the pines के पेड़ के पास में in a few minutes fog would be wrapped about the house too, and then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. But at this moment उसने सोचा फिर वो रूम में हना के पास में जाएगा जहाँ उसके दो बच्चे भी हैं. But at this moment we would come to know the door opened. We would come to know the door opened and she looked out at a dark blue woolen hairy over her kimono. We would come to know that what happened over there. What is hairy? A loose outer garment worn over kimono. Kimono जो जापानीज ड्रेस है, kimono ट्रेडिशनल जापानीज गारमेंट होता है, उसके ऊपर उसने गाउन पहन रखा है. ठीक है. Who came outside? Hannah. She came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood, smiled and said nothing. Here I would like to mention you that she came and stood near Sadao and smiled at him and said nothing. He had met Hannah. Now writer would like to introduce over here Hannah. He had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure he was Japanese. Students, I would like to mention over here what he had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her. आप इस लाइन को देखेंगे. He had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. Means what? That they had met in America. Sadao knew that his father would never allow to marry in other caste, okay, and in other country, and that's why his father would marry him to a Japanese girl only, and so he ensured this before falling in love with her. पहले उसने ये देखा कि जापानीज है तभी मैं affection start करूंगा. In America, his father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. He wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah. He wondered often that whom he would married. Often he would wonder often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah, and by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance, literally at an American's professor house. So we have come to know, हमने यहाँ पढ़ा क्या? He thought that the professor कि वो wonder he had not met her. If he would not have got a wife ऑल हिज लाइफ, कि अगर वो हना को नहीं मिलता तो उसको उसकी जैसी वाइफ नहीं मिलती. नाउ इन माई नेक्स्ट क्लास आई विल एक्सप्लेन यू वेयर डिड ही मीट हना एंड देन व्हाट डिड they see near to their house in my next class. Thank you. Have a nice day.